Hey, how's everybody doing? Welcome to Talking Shit. It's your boy Sophisticated Jerk. So yeah, I'm gonna rock out Dolo tonight. Saw this video, man. I've been meaning to do it a long time, doing a review on it a long time ago, but man, I've been just too busy, getting that paper. But let me go ahead and pull the video up so y'all can see it. So the video we're gonna review tonight is the one with Piers Morgan. I think Andrew Wilson was in it, Tomi Lahren, two other beta males. So pretty much Andrew Wilson, he was crushing everybody on the panel, and rightfully so, because Tomi Lahren, I think she's like a fake conservative traditional woman. And the two guys, they were like beta traditional guys. So I think Andrew was like, definitely giving them some pushback and breaking down the topics of toxic masculinity and feminism and all that type of stuff. So they address it. I think they're talking about a show that came out recently about adolescence. I think that's the name of the movie. So let me just jump into the video because I think Piers Morgan is going to give a recap of that, and then I'm gonna pause it throughout and give my take on certain things.
On Netflix is currently the biggest show in the world. The drama about a 13-year-old misogynist who kills a teenage girl has been seen by 25 million people so far and was raised by the British Prime Minister in Parliament.
With our children, I've got a 16-year-old boy and a 14-year-old girl. It's a very, very good documentary to watch, or drama. This violence carried out by young men, influenced by what they see online, is a real problem. It's abhorrent, and we have to tackle it.
It's actually a fictional story, Prime Minister, not a documentary.
Yeah, that's weird that you bringing up a TV show in Parliament. I think they should probably throw his ass out. It's like, man, you got enough stuff like reality that you could address if you want to get a point across. So yeah, that was kind of strange that he's referencing a fake ass TV show to try to push a point. But let me get back to the video.
As the Prime Minister referenced, it tells the story of young boys who are radicalized by content online. There are references to the manosphere, the Matrix, incels, and red pills. Andrew Tate gets a name check. And that part of the show has sparked an outpouring of commentary about the abject horrors of the internet and the crisis of male role models.
Banged by a girl, you sausage.
You're not getting it.
What am I not getting?
Dad, you're not reading what they're doing. It's a call to action by the manosphere. 80% of women are attracted to 20% of men. You must trick them because you'll never get them in a normal way.
Well, the Guardian,
Yeah, man, because I'm not in no manosphere and no red pill or nothing like that. I've been on record doing debates with some of them guys, man, giving pushback on certain things, but man, they have a lot of truths, and a lot of times they're telling guys like, hey man, don't be emotional, man, don't never put your hands on a woman, build yourself up, get yourself together, man. Make sure you got a good network. So it's like, man, they push a lot of those messages. So for people to pin it down to like, they're talking about some call to arms type stuff. It's just like, man, I get you might not like some of the topics and shit that some of the guys might say, but it's like, man, you don't got to go to the extreme and like, be like, oh man, this is dangerous. It's like, man, and you skip over the part where they're like, nah, man, take care of your family. Make sure you, do A, B, C, D and stuff. So it's like, man, they say a lot of positive stuff that guys should be doing as far as like taking on responsibility. So it's just, sometimes it's already disingenuous when they come this way. And it's just like, man, a lot of them guys are saying some good things. Now we could challenge some of the bad points, but to pin it like they're just like far extreme type shit, it's just like, man, that's pushing it. And that is kind of messed up because they do say a lot of solid points for men to build up and not be like the little kid that was in the movie and shit. So let me get back to the video.
Up the general tone of the reporting with a headline that said from the police to the Prime Minister how adolescence is making Britain face up to toxic masculinity. But is it really? Can it not just be a successful drama that references popular culture, as so many do? Critics of the show say it's another version of the same man-bashing narrative that gave rise to the so-called manosphere in the first place. Well, here to debate all this is the host of The Crucible, Andrew Wilson, the radio host, James Barr, the host of Tomi Lahren is Fearless on Outkick, Tomi Lahren, and the host of the Determined Society, Sean Fraser. Welcome to all of you. Andrew Wilson, let me start with you, because look, I've got three sons, 31, 27, 24. I think I brought them up to respect women, to not behave in a misogynist way, and to behave in a pretty decent way generally. But I'm also aware that they've grown up in an era when the likes of Andrew Tate and others have become increasingly dominant in the way that a lot of impressionable young men start to think and view women. And for all that Andrew Tate can say that is positive about getting fit and being successful and confident and so on, there's indisputably a hardcore streak of misogyny that runs through his veins, which I think has been quite damaging to young I'm not all in either way here, but I can certainly see the arguments. Where do you sit?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that so I watched the show, and it just goes through a typical feminine view, right? So all of these things are always through the prism of the feminine. So young boys, they don't do well in school. They don't do well in school because it's all programmed for the feminine. Stay still, fold your hands, right? Be quiet. Boys are rambunctious. They like to beat each other up. They like to be mischievous. They like to break things. They like to do that kind of stuff. There's no outlet for them to do that stuff. Their teachers are all women, right? There's basically all masculinity is now considered toxic, basically all of it. The same women who are getting their double shot of espresso on the way over to the school they're about to teach at, they're 24 years old. Sometimes they're banging their own students, right? Hilariously enough. And then these people go out to parliament. The same women will go to parliament. They vote to send men off to war to stab each other in the face with bayonets. And you're concerned about toxic masculinity. It cracks me up. It's like the brutal savagery of men is a necessary precondition for society to exist. And we just kind of pretend like it's not. And this show should actually be an indictment on the feminine rather than the masculine, because basically masculinity is just punished everywhere all the time, nonstop. It's no wonder guys like Andrew Tate get so famous in these spaces. I mean, what's the alternative? The alternative is everything must be feminine, tone policing, nonsense like this. It's ridiculous.
All right, James Barr.
Let me pause right there. So just going back to the school thing, it's funny, man, because I got a son that's in his 20s, and one thing I say to people, like if you're a masculine man and you have that presence around your kid, they don't need to gravitate to anybody else, for the messaging. Because my son, he's of that age and he really don't even be like YouTube like that. Because I always taught him like, hey, man, you got to be outside. You got to do your studies, but also you need to live life, man. You can't be sitting there living on devices. So I kind of forced him to go outside and interact. And I think a lot of times that's the issue with a lot of people. They're like trying to blame Andrew Tate, for like, oh, he's influencing them. It's like, well, if y'all stepped up in y'all kids' lives and put them in different things, nobody should be able to influence them like that. But there was a couple points that Andrew said, and I hate the word like toxic masculinity, man, because it's like it don't go with masculinity, because masculinity really, if you look at the definition, it's just traits of a man, pretty much, where everybody now is like trying to perverse like definitions of stuff. So like a lot of times when we're in these spaces and stuff, and we have like, I've been on a lot of panels with females. So the way that they kind of present toxic masculinity down, it's like a guy that has some standards, some boundaries are, he's on some, because I'm a 50-50 guy too. So I'm like, I ain't paying no chicks bills. So they're like, oh, that's toxic. So it's like, whatever is like, doesn't conform to what they kind of want, or, it's not kissing their ass. They consider that toxic. So it's just like, what Andrew's kind of painting that picture is, it's like, hey man, we got a lot of guys, them dudes that, there was like the big massive fires in California, the guys that jump in the middle of a fire to put it out. We like them toxic traits then, what I'm saying, all the aggression and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a lot of times people overuse these words and stuff to try to push their narrative and shit. But so I'm glad he's challenging them points. And then, even in school, a lot of times he's right, man. I think boys are a little antsy, so they just can't sit there and do their studies and stuff, because it's like, we like to go outside and roughhouse a little bit, play sports and stuff. So I do think like schools need to kind of start looking at stuff and maybe switches some things where guys have a shorter attention span. It's like you could build the curriculum to kind of make sure boys are incorporated in that. Because yeah, just sitting down all day, you lose a lot of guys. I was like that until like I got out of the army and went to college and stuff. And then once I did that, I was able to kind of like calm down and focus in. But before that, I was like, yeah, I'm not a school person. I can't do it. I just can't sit down. So there's a lot of guys that fall in between that. So I do think maybe we need to start looking at some of that. But let me get back to the video.
You were laughing, but I don't think you had a joy what you're hearing.
No, I mean, I don't think you've seen the show. Episode 2 is shot entirely in a school. I didn't see one of the female teachers drinking a double shot of espresso at all. None of the teachers were flirting with students. There were male teachers as well. I don't think you're describing the show here. I think you're describing your own insecurities or agenda.
Yeah, so this doesn't contend with the argument. Like, do you understand that I'm making an argument, an indictment of society itself based around my ideas that I'm seeing from this show? That's what I'm actually doing. So if you could contend with the fact that male savagery is necessary for the security of a nation, and that women will indeed vote in the future in parliaments to send men off to war to stab each other in the face at 18 years old with bayonets, perhaps you can contend with that before we start, getting into, well, tone policing is actually good and toxic masculinity is actually bad. It's like, I think there needs to be a little bit more toxic masculinity, or what you consider to be toxic masculinity.
Well, great. Good for you.
Nothing.
I'm glad you think so.
Nothing.
No, I mean, I just don't need to argue with that, because
you just unlocked. You just unlocked. You got nothing.
You're making up.
You do seem unusually muted by that.
I've not said anything. I haven't literally said nothing about
James, you were literally rendered silent. Like
because
you had nowhere to respond.
I'll tell you what, you can't argue with a completely illogical argument that had, like, I've not made any of the
It's a logical argument. You may not agree with it.
I've not made any of the comments.
Making a perfectly logical argument
that you are firing at me. None of those comments are things I've said or believe in.
All right, I want to bring Tommy in, because Tommy, you've got a very...
Yeah, he was like, I don't want none of that smoke. He was like, abort mission, because he threw them comments out there like, oh, you're insecure and stuff. But when Andrew kind of applied a little bit of pressure and stuff, he did kind of like, yeah, let me back about that. I didn't say shit. So he did throw that out there early, though.
Interesting perspective, I think. You've talked about something different. You call it the pussification of men, which is a great phrase. I'd love you to just explain what you mean by that. But also, you're not a fan of Andrew Tate or the influence he has. So that makes you, I think, an interesting commentator in this area. So just explain.
When he was saying this, Andrew Tate must have called her out about something. But like I heard her talk about this pussification before. I'm gonna let it play, but we're gonna come back to that, because one thing you gotta do hate about a lot of these spaces, and I got on a lot of dudes about it, because I think a lot of times, man, when men are bad with women and they really haven't had a lot of female interactions, they almost look for females to always validate them. So like when I first came into like YouTube, and we was always like having discussions, a bunch of almost like a lot of guys were looking for women to define like masculinity for them. So when I was always giving pushback, I'm like, why the fuck are y'all like, we know what masculinity is. When we grew up, it was like the dudes that was like tough, played football, sports, MMA, boxing. You know, if a guy was like a SEAL, Army Ranger, or, just all around tough and carried himself that way, that's what we consider masculine. But nowadays, what I'm seeing is like a lot of guys are allowing women to define masculinity, and you're going to kind of see it play out when women define masculinity. Typically it's like a guy pay my bills and be stupid and let me run you, but I would stroke your ego and call you masculine. So that's really what it means nowadays. So nowadays, if a female call me masculine, I'm offended by it. I'm like, oh hell no, I ain't no simp, because really that's the picture that they painted, and you're going to see it. So let me get back to the video.
First of all, the pussification of men.
All right, Piers. Well, I think, and I can't see you all, so forgive me if I'm incorrect here, but I think I'm the only female on this panel.
Correct.
So I'm really anxious to weigh in. Okay. So I think over the last probably 10 years, there has been what I call the pussification of men. It was everything should be about your emotions and your feelings, and men were emasculated, and this whole concept of toxic masculinity warped the minds of a lot of young men. And they felt masculine, they wanted to be masculine, but society was telling them they should be softer, that it was being toxically masculine if you wanted to play sports and chop wood and go to war. And so men were so emasculated and so beat down that then there was this revolution of what was actually toxic masculinity, the Tate brothers and others, which I feel as a female that doesn't represent true masculinity. That to me represents douchebaggery. And as a woman, I want a strong man who is a protector and a provider that will go to war if need be, that will protect me, protect my family, make money. I see that as being actually masculine. That's like the man that I grew up with, my dad. But what we're seeing now is these young men who look at Andrew Tate and the Tate brothers, and they see somebody who's just quite frankly a douchebag and disrespects women. And because they've been so emasculated, they're like, oh, great, that's a manly man. But that's not right either. So at some point, I think we'll go back to maybe meeting in the middle here. You can be a man who has feelings and emotions, but you can also go to war and protect and defend your family. I'm hoping we can get back there. But the two extremes right now, they're confusing men. And quite frankly, they're leaving women with few choices. And that's the real tragedy here.
You see,
let me pause it right there. But the issue I have with what they say is because I always go tell guys, I'm like, man, when they talk about provider, it's very centric on like pay my bills. Because what a lot of women leave out with the whole provision thing, you could give your family guidance, knowledge, but really what a lot of modern women, they're trying to frame it up as like, you pay my bills and take your ass to work and I want a soft life, aka I'm not gonna really do shit around the house, hire a nanny, and I want to chill out. So it's never like kind of what I'm here for the family too. What do I need to do to fill the gaps on the family? What do I need to do? It's always just like you need to do all this shit. So I think what's happening in society is like, and I don't really think there's a pussification of men. Because to tell you the truth, I think they're a little smarter than old school dudes. Because I think they're actually assessing the environment. They're understanding like, damn, I'm being asked to do a lot of additional shit. Because if you think about it, like nobody ever talks about the economics of the traditional stuff, which, is kind of stupid for us to do. If everybody's an intellect, growing up, because I'm in my 40s now, we didn't have the internet. So that was a bill like a lot of older people didn't have to worry about. The big ass cable packages that we have now. Because, there was only so many channels and stuff. So that's a bill. So that's damn near like, depending on what package you have, like $600. Gas, I remember, I was just talking to somebody the other day. You could fill up your tank with $5. Now it's like, depending on what type of car, it's damn near above $40. You could fill up a cart of groceries for like $150. Man, you'll be lucky to get like some Tide Pods and toilet paper and some soda and shit and a bag of chips for that damn near price. So the economics is way different. Oh, the cell phone plans. So now you got the cell phone plans for the whole family. So man, you're probably looking northward of like, oh yeah, housing increases, how much they cost now. Housing insurance done went up. So man, you're looking at an additional $1,500 probably on cost that we have nowadays compared to what they had to pay nowadays. So, the women back in the days understood, hey, we come into the picture, sacrifice. We only probably need one car. We do a vacation probably once every 3 years and it's locally in the state. But now guys are being asked to pay for like luxury trips, cruises, resorts, all this additional other stuff. And, they're, what's she saying, pussies if they don't, go to their beck and call and do what they want. So a lot of guys are like, man, I'm good. Like I can do bad by myself. I don't need no assistance help spending my paper. So I think that's where she's missing the whole dynamic of why guys are coming at that. And guys like Andrew Tate and I think other ones are like, hey man, don't take no bad deal in life. Like, you set the terms and they supposed to come under you to help me. You know what I'm saying? If we're defining it right by biblically, they're supposed to be assisting you. And even you have the women like Tomi Lahren, whatever the hell her name is, man, they're working and they still want the guy to pay the bills on top of that. So that's what I'm saying. So their position in masculinity, provision is just some sucker shit. That's where we got to be honest. That's what they're framing it as. Like, come pay my bills while I stash my paper and I'll stroke your ego. And so that's where she's pretty much talking right now. And by the way, man, a lot of times when women, they go back in the past and they're like, well, my dad did this. Well, your dad was a simp. You know, we got to just call it out. Like all those old people that everybody traditionally wants to go back and glorify, those was the happy wife, happy life guys. Those were the guys that gave the money over. The women handled everything. They were being led. So that's why I'm saying a lot of this masculinity shit, when you go back and you start looking at it, be like, man, that's why I told people, I don't want no parts of that traditional shit. They were all simps. You know what I'm saying? No, they wasn't setting the terms of like the household. Like, hey, this is what I want us to do. This is where I'm guiding you. You know, they were being led in all actuality. So that's where Tomi Lahren, she wants a guy that, hey, makes a lot of money and he will allow her to lead him. And a lot of guys fall in that thing, man. So like I said, they get their ego stroked. Like, oh, I'm masculine. I pay all the bills. Huh, here's my wallet, babe. Happy wife, happy life. You know, so it's a female construct, really.
Completely agree with you. But Andrew, you were shaking your head quite vigorously. Why?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just more feminine or feminist nonsense, ultimately. And the covert feminism in society is big, especially on the conservative side. So here's what happens, right? Women need to have feminine virtues for men to be pursuing masculine virtues, for you to say things like, well, men, what I want is for men to protect me and I want men to make money. Well, that's great. What that ends up doing is it gives you a set of privilege in society. What do men get? What do men get for doing that for you? What are we getting from women for doing that? Are we getting chaste virgins on our wedding night? No, we're not getting chaste virgins on our wedding night. Are we getting women of great virtue? No, we're not getting women of great virtue. The idea of courtly love is supposed to be done for women of great virtue. Where are they? Well, they're nowhere. And so in modernity, in society, when female conservative influencers say this, it's actually a form of covert feminism. They're saying, I want privilege in society, right? But what is it women are giving to men to get it? What are they giving them? Tell me.
Well,
Can I please chime in here?
Yes, you can. And then James can, and I'll come to you, Sean.
No, I would love to. I love this whole.
Well, let me cover what Andrew's saying, and this is important, and a lot of people get upset. But it's just like, it's funny, man, because I asked a few women that I would say are virtuous, and I was just like, hey, man, what do you kind of bring to a relationship? You know, the whole, what do you bring to the table? Because I was just like, we were talking about it, and I was just like, man, why do people get upset when you ask somebody that? Because if you brought stuff to the table, man, it shouldn't be an issue. You should be able to spit shit off like, oh, man, I do this and this. I'm willing to. So I asked a few women that kind of fit in that virtuous lane. Man, they had a list of stuff. They wasn't offended. You know, if a guy had requirements, they already met them, so they wouldn't be fit. They wouldn't be upset if a guy was like what Andrew Wilson's doing right now. If he's like, hey, man, what does a guy get? They're not upset when they do that. So typically what I'm starting to see is like females that get mad about a dude having requirements, they typically don't fall within that. So that's where they give the pushback, because they know like, oh, damn, he's on to me. Yeah, I'm really not bringing shit but an appetite, you know, to the table. So yeah, I'm trying to just get his money and use them. So when somebody's like trying to take advantage of a situation, that's when they get upset about these type of questions that's being asked. And when guys get upset, like when a guy like Andrew Wilson is asking these questions, 9 times out of 10, because like I said, they're terrible with women and they don't require anything, because they're in that place where they're probably not attracting women. So they got to lead with the wallet. So that's why they're like shocked. Like guys actually are in that position to be like, hey, man, I require something. I'm just, looks ain't going to cut it. You know, what do you actually bring to the situation? So that's why they're getting in an uproar that Andrew said that, but it shouldn't be a big thing. But I think she's about to clap back right now. We'll jump into it.
Whole thing of like, if you're a female conservative and you don't believe that men should be douchebags, that all of a sudden you're a covert feminist. Call me a feminist. I really don't give one crap one way or another. But I can tell you this, a lot of these men, these podcast hosts on the right that like to think of themselves as these big masculine men, and what am I getting out of it? I can tell you this.
There's that feminism.
All right, I believe I'm a woman of virtue,
coming
right?
out.
Yeah, there's the feminism. Oh, and then you're interrupting me too.
Didn't
which
take
is great.
long,
I let
did
you
it? Didn't
talk.
take
It's my
long,
turn.
did it?
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to speak over me?
Yeah, I don't care if you call me. I don't really care if you call me a
strong,
feminist.
independent woman.
Yeah. Yeah. You're actually interrupting me. I didn't interrupt you when you were spewing your bullshit. So now it's my turn. Okay.
You mean
so,
the truth?
like I said before, so I believe there we go again. Piers, I'm a woman of virtue. I happen to be independently successful. I have a husband who's not only a former professional athlete, but is currently a professional baseball coach. So is he not a masculine man? I mean, I'm confused here. What's your concept
Don't you
of a
understand that
masculine man?
misses the
Mine is a
point,
man who
that
respects
misses-
me.
Yeah, that misses the point, though. Like, you're still not contending with the argument
what's
that
your
I'm
point?
making. I'm saying inside of society, right this second, right, masculinity is not only punished, but also women on the right, covert feminists on the right, are constantly and consistently talking about how they need to have privilege in society. I want men. Their version of masculinity is men who take care of us, men who protect us, men who do all of this. Those are all duties that men have towards women. Great. What are the duties that women have towards men? What are the duties that women have towards anything? What do men get out of this arrangement? What are we getting out of this arrangement? Can you tell me?
I mean,
Well, I would argue that men innately should be
I don't wanna
protectors and providers.
Hang on one second. Let Tomi
Most men are
respond.
born that way.
Let Tomi respond to that, and then I'll come to you, Jez. And then
Yeah,
Sean,
most
you've
men
been
are-
waiting patiently. So
Most men are born to be protectors and providers. I can't imagine my dad saying, you know what, to my mom, you know what, I'm not going to be a protector and a provider unless you do this. That's not how real men operate. Real men are protectors and providers, and they marry women who hopefully
great.
have
A
some
woman telling
virtue,
us what
but
real
also
men
bring a
are
lot to
again.
the
Great.
table as well, that are great mothers, great wives, caretakers of the home. There's nothing wrong with being a traditional wife and mother. You're misunderstanding me if you think that I think that women should just be out doing whatever they want.
And you see how they can't really get into details. And like I said, going back, like when I asked the women that were virtuous, they were like, look, man, if I work, I'm bringing my money home so I can help build up the house. I'm good at finances. I'm here to help pay down finances. Hey, I make sure that my family never wants for anything. You know, I go above and beyond, making sure my kids are educated above the pack of, you know, scores like that they measure people with. So, you know, I'm making sure my household excels. So a lot of times when Andrew's pointing out, it's just like, she sounds like, you know, the other side when she's typically getting on him like, oh, you know, wokeness and this. It's like, man, y'all kind of want the same shit. Because like I said, it's just like, hey, I want this masculine man. Like even when she kind of broke down her husband, like he makes money. He's, you know, this and this. But it's just like, okay, man, like what Andrew's kind of asking her, like, so what does the guy get out the deal? So she got mad and was like, oh, you know, I couldn't imagine my dad asking that. And what they failed to realize, like, if you know, a masculine man is going to be drawn to that. So you're going to have those characteristics. So like when I got married to my wife, it was funny because like, you know, before everybody gets married, you go on dates and you're supposed to pick somebody's brain and ask tough questions to each other. So like, I asked her, I was like, man, how do you see the dynamics in the household? And one thing that she stuck out from everybody else, she was just like, I'm going to do whatever's needed for my household. So if I got to do this, go to work, if I got to do this, I'm going to do whatever's kind of, you know, required for the household to get it to that next level. So she said a simple statement like that. I was like, okay, man, she's different from the rest of the people because everybody else was like, well, I want this. I want the soft life. You know, I would love to be at this. Never once considering what my house might need at that time. And so that's what Andrew's kind of like, you know, what does the guy get out of that? Because, yeah, we understand some of the responsibilities, but hey, things in life happen. Things change where he might not be able to contribute all that. And this is why the divorce rate is high as hell. This is why a lot of times people are like, well, I'm not happy no more. And that's why guys are starting to figure out, man, I need to require some shit because this is risky and I could get wiped out, you know, if somebody's not happy and they feel like I'm not doing all these things that they want, the luxury stuff. So guys are coming with requirements and she's confusing it as like, oh, they're being pussies because they're doing this. It's like, hell nah. Like a smart person knows how to look and observe in the society. And if you see a bunch of people, like you might have some friends, some relatives that got divorced and stuff, and you seen some shit where the guy got kind of wiped out, it's going to change you in a way. So even me and that I'm married, I've seen enough, you know, divorces and friends that went through it where I'm looking at it like, shit, maybe in these modern times, like if me and my wife didn't work out, man, I'm not going to get married, man. I'm keeping it a buck. And I'm going to have high requirements. If somebody's coming in there, I'm like, shit, what do you have to bring to the table? Because I got assets, you know, I'm in the 1%. So I'm not going to sit there and sign up for some shit so I could take some losses. So like I said, they're confusing it as like men being feminine, but not. Men are just wisening up because they understand it's a whole totally different legal system that's out here. So the legal system is modern as hell. So even if you want a traditional marriage, like you're still attached to a modern legal system. So that's why I tell people all the time, I'm like, man, all that traditional shit is gone. You know, if you're in the United States in this new age, it's modern and everybody's like I say, I'm a 50-50 guy. And people be like, oh, 50-50 relationships. I don't know how everybody's in a 50-50 relationship. If you don't believe me, go and get a divorce and see what the legal system says. Cut your shit in half. So the difference between me and some other people, I get to join a 50-50 up front because we both contributed, we both gain. But on the back end, everybody, you're in a 50-50 relationship. Go contact a lawyer right now. You can be like, yeah, you're giving up half that shit, you know. But let me get back to the video.
I think that there are gender roles that should be respected. But I don't think a man needs to get something out of it to be a manly man, a protector, and a provider. If you think you need to get something out of it, I quite frankly don't consider you a real man.
Yeah, she have nothing.
See, and that, man, you don't get nothing out of this situation. So it's like I said, listen to what she's saying. Sign up, do as I say, put all your shit at risk. And that's what masculine is. And so many guys, like I said, because she's a pretty girl, so like, even in her situation, so many guys are infatuated by beauty that they don't require, like, for me, I like smart women. I like women that work. You know, you got to work. I don't need nobody staying at home doing chores. Like, I could clean up after myself. That's not an issue. So it's just like I have different requirements, but I'm also not thirsty and pressed, or I don't base everything off of looks. I'm like, hey, we both go out here, we win, man. We pour it into the house, we invest, man. Guess what? We're going to live a different life. We're going to get to enjoy each other, kick it, go on like nice little trips. So, you know, me and my wife have a different mindset. She actually wants me around. She don't want me working like 70 hours and shit, never being there. She actually wants to kick it with me. So a lot of these females, when they're talking, it's like, damn, do you even want that man around? Like, you know, it just sounds like like they're mercenaries, man. Like, give me my money, take your ass to work, do whatever to make me happy, and, you know, slave yourself out there. And then eventually, hey, you could come home and shit. So it just sounds cold, man. And that's what, like, Andrew's pointing out, like, that's not how a virtuous woman talks. You know what I'm saying? If you've been around some, because like with her, it's just like you get nothing out the deal. Like that's just terrible. Because like even a good woman is going to make sure that you're winning. Also, she's going to look out for your best interest. She's like, even if she wants to be a stay-at-home wife, you know, like a lot of virtuous women, they're going to make sure that like, okay, we need to sacrifice to make sure, like, you know, if the guy's working, we're not blowing the money, we're not misusing it. I'm cutting coupons like back in the day. Like they would stretch the dollar out for the household. So, you know, they're not talking about like handbags and shit like that. So that's where I like Andrew's giving that pushback.
You have nothing.
But we'll discuss in a moment whether Andrew Wilson is a real man.
Piers, I offer nothing. I offer nothing.
You offer me a lot of things, Tommy. That's why I always love having you on the show. You know that. Let's go to a real man, James Barr.
Thank you. I do see myself as a man. And I know that you were looking at me thinking, well, you're not. You're wearing makeup. You're wearing colorful clothes. Like, look at me. I'm really camp. My nails are painted.
I mean, they are worrying.
You know,
signs,
you're sat there smoking a cigarette. I'd love to get a vape out and start drinking a beer. You know, pints with the lads, just connect with you over that. I think that you have some insane opinions on what women are meant to do for you. It's crazy that you don't appreciate that a woman actually gave birth to you. Like she gave you a womb for 9 months and then looked after you, I would hope, for the beginning of your life. And you're sat there going, what do women owe men? Women don't owe men anything. No one owes you anything. You have your own life.
Do you understand that if you make an argument and you say
that
women
I've watched your seminar on how to win an argument.
In a position, if the women are supposed to be in a position of privilege where men do A, B, C, and D for them, and then I ask, well, what duties do women have? And you say, well, nothing.
No one said that men need.
Why are men checking out? I don't know why men are checking out. I don't get it.
You just
that's silly, man.
All right, let me bring.
And that's the point that they don't grasp. Because, like, if you look online, there's a bunch of videos floating around where, like, I think a lot of women are having singles events and guys ain't showing up. They're just like, we're good. Like I heard a couple guys, they would talk about it. They're just like, man, it costs too much to date. The expectations, like, they're talking about women like, I don't want to go to like Cheesecake Factory and stuff. So this is what he's trying to say. Like, man, what did the guys get? Because they're tapping out. Like the birth rates are dropping. These dudes ain't going to these like singles events. Like I covered one, man. Like these brunches were empty. Like the women are like, damn, they're like, come on, guys, we'll pay for y'all shit. So the other side is kind of asking, like, hey, man, we want guys to start showing up. Like, where the men at? So it ain't the guys asking these questions. It's a lot of these women like, damn, y'all, like we get, please come to these events, man. We miss y'all. And then when you're saying condescending shit like the dude in the middle and Tommy, it's just like, dudes don't want to sign up for that bad deal no more. Because like I said earlier, when you go through the costs and all the expectations, they're like, man, my grandfather ain't had to do all that shit. And he got a better product. Like he got a more virtuous woman that was concerned with like him, the household. Like if you ask some of the older ladies, like, those questions that Andrew's asking, man, they would be spitting off all kind of shit. Like, man, I'm doing everything for my household, my husband, he's a great guy. So I made sure that he was straight, made sure that I was looking out for his health and stuff. So they talked with a level of concern for him. And you're just not getting that nowadays. That's why she was like getting upset. It's just like, damn, how's that a hard question? You said you married. Like, what good things do you do for your husband? You could just you should be able to spit that off. Because like I said, when I asked my wife that question, I was like, hey, why don't you get offended by like the 50-50 or if I ask you, and I was like, man, what do you bring to the table? She was like, it was like 8 things. I was like, all right, man, shut up. I get the point. So, that's how this shit sort of be that hard, man. And then for guys to kind of chime in, how are you requiring anything? It's like, man, just because you don't require anything, don't mean other men should require stuff. And I that's why I hate some of these guys, because it's like, hey, man, it's all right for you to be a simp. I get it, man. Hey, you lead with the wallet. You want to pay for everything. Spend your bread, man. But nigga, don't be mad at me because I got requirements. Like I'm gonna make sure you bring something to this situation. I'll be by myself, man. Every guy ain't pressed and thirsty for women.
All right, let me bring in the one person who so far hasn't said a word about this. Has a lot of interesting things to say. Sean, welcome.
Yeah, shout out to that guy. He's like, shit, I don't know where to get in this conversation. He's like, I'm gonna be quiet till I'm called on it. I don't want none of this drama. He's gonna say some sim shit. I could bet it.
It's uncensored. I mean, I think one of the key things of this series that's made it so popular is that anyone who's had young sons knows that they are, if you're not careful, they get exposed to a lot of nasty stuff on the internet. We all know this. And a lot of it is this kind of incel stuff, which I think can be a really malevolent influence on impressionable young men. And they gravitate to it. And I think that partly what Andrew's getting at, I agree with, in the sense that following the Me Too Time's Up campaigns, which were in many ways, extremely laudable, brought down a lot of very bad men, no question of that. But the pendulum swung so wildly that I think a lot of young men in particular felt completely disenfranchised from society, felt like they're all being treated like a bunch of young Harvey Weinsteins unless they could prove otherwise. They didn't really know what the rules of engagement were with women, with teenage girls anymore, whatever. They lost their way. And by losing their way, they gravitated, I think, to very loud voices on the internet like Andrew Tate, who I think, like I say, he says a lot of stuff I find myself nodding to, and then he'll say this misogynist stuff, which I just despise it. I see no reason why you should ever want to have a relationship with a woman the way that Andrew Tate wants you to, where it's just pure misogyny. Just talk to me first of all about why you think young boys, teenage boys, young men, why they've gravitated to people like Tate. Because I have.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I think it's, first of all, we got to understand that we have an amazing responsibility as a parent to lead from the home and to have these open conversations with our young children. All right, whether they're male children, female children. We have to make sure that we're having open door conversations and we are tackling the hard subjects. Because if we don't take care of everything at home, we don't take care of everything in public, like at school, and other forces within society that help raise our children, we always say it takes a village. Well, it certainly does, but it starts at home. And if you cannot have these open conversations and allow your children to be honest and open with how they are feeling about society and the things that they are seeing, they are going to go to misogyny. They're going to go to the Andrew and Tristan Tates of the world, and they're going to learn how to be a man from that. And that is not what society needs. It's not what the world needs. That is not masculinity. It is masquerading as misogyny.
How do we protect young men from the easy access at the moment there is to people like Tate? I mean, how do you actually put a ring fence around them so that you can tackle exactly what you've just said, but they're not also being dragged into that world?
It's tough because they're growing up in a world we never grew up in, Piers. We didn't grow up with the internet. We didn't grow up with Bumble,
that's right.
Tinder, Instagram, Facebook.
No, I was taught how to treat women by my mother, my grandmother.
Open the door, right?
Aunts,
Open the door.
A lot of strong women in my family, very strong women, and they would just take no crap from the men. So that's the environment I grew up in.
Absolutely.
I think the issue a lot of times, like I said, everybody goes to the extreme. So like with my son, I have a conversation. So I agree with him. Like, you definitely gotta, and I think I said this earlier in the video, like, man, you gotta make sure that you're that lead by example, where you're that picture, what you need to be for your family and stuff that you would want your son to kind of emulate. And you just have conversations with him. But it's just like, man, you can't. I think a lot of times, man, people get carried away with these terms like misandry, this. Man, if I was like, if he was listening to Andrew Tate, I'd be like, all right, man, let's listen to some videos, man. This is where I agree with Andrew Tate. Like right here, he's spot on with this stuff, but this is where I disagree. This is why. But I wouldn't just be like, oh, he's misandry, don't listen to him. Because that's when you, I think when you just say, don't do this all together without actually going into depth and pointing out why something you disagree with it, you kind of build that curiosity, and they're going to gravitate toward that anyway. So I think that's the issue, where some people are just so surface level. They don't have like deep discussions, and they don't have like good responses to stuff. So for example, when Andrew was asking Tomi about certain things, she couldn't explain it. So when people are vague and they really don't think out their thoughts and shit, and they just like slander shit, that's where people build that curiosity, because they're like, well, you're not really saying shit. You're just saying misandry and toxic masculinity. Why is it toxic? Why is it this? So I would just be like, hey, man, I disagree right here because blah, blah, blah. And you should treat everybody with respect. You know, that's why I tell my son and stuff. But like I said, a lot of times shit's so vague and people don't give like great explanations. Just, you know, name calling, and it just goes back and forth. Then they clap back at these people. So I think that's where parents got to get better. Like, man, you know what? Let's listen to some episodes, and you know, this is where I disagree. This is where I give pushback. This is where they're right. And I think people will open up like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I see what you're saying now. So I would just recommend people do that versus this, oh, this is bad.
So how do we insulate our children from this? By having conversations, putting parameters around the social media aspects of life, and having the conversations at home. Hey, son, hey, daughter, this is what you're going to see out there in the real world. This is what you're going to see on the internet. If you see something like this, that is not how a true man is supposed to act. And hey, that's not how a real man's supposed to treat you.
Right. So
we have to have the conversations.
Yeah. Andrew, do you intrinsically disagree with what you've just heard?
And the other piece before Andrew jumps back in, I would just say, like, we definitely need to, like I say, I tell my son how to respect everybody, how to respect women, but I also teach him how he needs to be respected back, how a good woman needs to treat him. And then I think that's the piece where a lot of times, like, a lot of women don't want, it's almost like they don't want that part of the conversation to happen. But, you know, when guys are going through and they're getting experience and they're getting, you know, they're tapping out the market. They're like, all right, when they break up, they're not going back out there. So that's why, like, I tell my son, I'm like, nah, you know, you need to be treated good too. My wife tells him like what a good woman looks like, what she needs to be, how she needs to be treating them coming into the situation. So I think more women, you know, y'all have sons, brothers, cousins. Y'all need to tell them, like, like how not to be used by women and how they need to like have that interaction. So we can't just always be on one side of the equation and be like, y'all need to do this, y'all need to do this, y'all need to do this. And then on the other side is crickets. And then wondering why like guys are kind of like, man, I'm good on this. Like, I'm straight, man, because I keep having terrible interactions. So it's just like, man, we all got to like face the facts and like have the real conversation on all sides. You know what I'm saying? And shout out to Andrew for trying to push it there. But I think, you know, people sometimes just get triggered instead of be like, hey, Andrew, why do you keep saying that? Why are you, you know, pushing for like those points that you're talking about? And then he could get into like the depth of it instead of people getting triggered and be like, oh my God, that's toxic. Oh, you're insecure, Andrew. Like, so it just messes up the conversation.
Yeah, I do. I think, again, all of this is always the burden on men, burden on men, burden on men. Men need to be doing
family,
this.
Andrew. The family.
Hang on. Let
the
me finish,
family,
man.
Andrew.
Men need to,
husband and wife.
Okay, yeah. So let me back up. Okay. Again, men need to do this. Men need to do that. What I'm talking about is what duties do women have in society? What are the actual women's duties towards men? Everybody is raised from the time they're kids how we're supposed to treat women. We all know how to treat women. We never talk about how men are supposed to be treated. That's almost never discussed, especially by how women are supposed to treat men, what their duties in society are. This has been completely dispelled. Guys like Tate have risen because Christianity itself has become a feminized religion, especially the Protestant sects has become completely feminized. And it didn't used to punish masculinity at all. And now it does. And so where's the alternative? Where's the spiritual alternative? It's nowhere. And we need to get back to this fundamental question of what even is misogyny? Because I don't think that men kicking the crap out of each other, being brutes, you know, insulting each other, hazing each other, even bullying each other is misogyny. Not only do I not think it's misogyny, I think it's perfectly healthy.
Yeah, but I don't think that's misogyny.
Well-adjusted.
Is that the argument?
But that is not misogyny.
Well, no. Hang on.
How women see
this is
misogyny is where you have a hatred or, you know, whatever you want to phrase it, towards women. It's not about men treating men.
Sorry, toxic masculinity is what I'm referencing here. And toxic masculinity is what they're claiming leads to misogyny. So what I'm talking about is these are all masculine traits. There's nothing wrong with them, right? When you're talking about misogyny itself, I want to know what that even is. Is it just asserting yourself to women, telling women no, telling them no, that's bullshit?
No, I would say it's okay. Let me
telling
answer
them you're saying stupid things.
Andrew Tate says he's quite open about it. Women should stay at home. They shouldn't go out to work. They should do what he tells them. He's the king of the castle in his house, blah, 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 blah. That is misogyny, isn't it? You know, I've got a daughter. I've got a 13-year-old daughter. I don't want her thinking she can never leave the house. She's somebody's chattel.
It's not never leaving the house. Look, it is true that the world would be a better place if we didn't have it inverted and women did have a natural role at home and that was glorified and that there was government propaganda around the nuclear family and keeping women home. Why do you want to outsource the raising of children to strangers instead of your wife? That's a way better society. Why do you want your best and brightest women forced to go to a workplace instead of the best and brightest women staying at home raising their children? That's a way better system. It's always been a better system.
I guess we're talking freedom of choice.
That's not misogyny.
Women to do anything. It's freedom of choice. It's freedom of choice. I love the fact that my wife's out there working, teaching kids and building adolescents. I love that.
And see, this is where like I'm glad they're starting to have the conversation because, you know, like what Andrew's saying, I disagree. I like, man, like with the one gentleman on the far right with the black shirt, like I like women at work. You know what I'm saying? So I think, you know, we just got a lot of modern conveniences and, you know, you could have flexible schedules where you could come in and like, man, I was very hands-on with helping raise my son. My wife, she was in the healthcare field where they had flexible schedules where, you know, we made it work and stuff. Like I said, my son's grown now and in college, doing great. So it's just like, man, I think sometimes like people might have a preference for something. And what he's saying is just like, man, that's a good lane, but there's other ways you could build a household and stuff. So as long as everybody's on board and puts the household first, it's like, man, you can have different dynamics. It ain't gotta be just one. one way to do stuff. So I like how they're kind of giving some pushback now. So, but this is the good thing about having these conversations. When people get out of their feelings, it's like, man, now you could give pushback. Like the guy is like, hey, man, I like the fact my wife's a teacher. Okay, facts. Because if in a lot of these situations, like nurses and stuff like that, a lot of men don't go in them lanes. So you need somebody to do that stuff. Because hell, if I get shot, I want somebody in that like ER or something. Or if I get hurt, I'm glad that women are out there working and stuff. And then they're in some of the schools teaching the kids, because a lot of times guys don't want some of these jobs, social workers. So there's some women that do some good stuff too. I just think a lot of times where guys can give pushback is like when women are like, even when they have jobs, they're like, oh, you're supposed to do everything and let me like have my money and put it to the side, and then don't go to the house. It's not for the betterment of the family. So that's where if a female's in that position, then it's like, yeah, nah, that's wrong. But if she's like, look, I want to make sure that we get to that next level. I want to use my money to help pay for tutors for our kids, private school, investment for retirement for the whole family, leaving something behind for a legacy. There ain't nothing wrong with that. That's submission. And a lot of times people try to paint that as not being submissive. It's like the only way you can be submissive is you stay in the house. And I can't agree with that. That's dumb thinking, especially with the economics today.
Of that, into your point about what do I get from a woman? I have a home. I have 3 beautiful children. I have communication in the house. And to me, that means more than anything. Like, I don't understand where I'm not saying you're wrong in your world, but to sit there and say to a woman, what do I get out of this woman? That's treating her like an object.
One thing I want to play a clip.
See, he fucked it up when he said that. Ask her what you get out of the man. I think both parties, if you're smart, man and woman, you ask like what you get out of the relationship. That's called like managing expectations. That's where you're like, okay, man, this is what I need in my life. This is what I want. This is communication, what everybody claims they want. So that's why I'm saying having requirements is good. It's actually masculine when you could come up there and be like, hey, man, this is what I'm looking for. Y'all have those discussions up early. So that way everybody understands like what they getting into. But it's just like, man, if you get in a relationship and you're just like, hey, just show up, be pretty. I don't have no like requirements and stuff like that. And then that's where you got people be like, oh, well, that person changed, or, you might, when you start having growth, start wanting more things. And this is where people split apart because they don't never have those type of discussions. And when people want something now, then that's when it becomes an issue. So it's like, hell nah, like up early, you better make sure you put what you kind of require, what you want out of this situation. And it ain't unmasculine to do that. It's actually smart. Cause like I said, shit, I when I got married and I was young, I made sure like I was laying shit out on the table. Women have their requirements too. And that's where you like hash it out. Okay, you know what? It actually messes. We're on the same path. We have the same mindset. This is what people call moving with attention. So that's where, like I said, you look at the divorce numbers. Most people don't move with intent. They're so scared, like, oh, if I have some requirements as a man, I'm gonna be perceived as being a punk or a pussy, like they say. And that's where a lot of them guys, they end up, they want to get out of the relationship, move on. Women want to get out of the relationship, move on, because these conversations ain't being had. So yeah, nah, he's wrong on this one.
Okay, so it's okay to treat men like objects, give them duties,
I
but
don't
you're not
feel
allowed
like
to
an
give
object.
women duties.
I feel respected.
Okay,
in
well,
my
let me
home.
ask you this.
I'm not
How
angry
come it is
about
in the
it.
United States that men can be drafted? Women can't be drafted, but women can vote to send men to war. 18 years old, they're stabbing each other in the face with bayonets. Women can vote to send men to war that they then themselves do not have to fight. It's a duty that men have, they do not have. What's the counter duty for women? There's no obligation for women to have children, well under replacement rate. It's slated 45% of women will be single in the next 10 years, up to 60% in the next 30. That's the estimates right now. Our replacement rate, we can't even replace our own country's birth rates. That's how low they are.
Maybe
This is what we're seeing as a systemic issue inside of society because nobody will put duties on women.
Go on,
Instead,
James.
you just
Maybe it's men like you that are making that
Maybe that's why
happen.
the
Maybe you're the
replacement
problem.
rate is low.
Yeah,
Women
It's
don't
crazy
want
to me as well that you are just sat here.
Don't talk over each other. Let James speak.
I can't understand why you are sat there confidently thinking of yourself as a victim constantly. You have a platform and you're sat here like, I'm a victim. What are women doing for me? What happened in your childhood that has made you so traumatized as an adult that you cannot stand?
I don't. see, that's the issue, man. And that's where it's like, who hurt you or something, man. Andrew's a married guy, man. So at the end of the day, you got to take that in consideration where, like, if people are married, it's like, obviously they're with somebody. So you can't go too far with it and make these stupid comments. So it's like, man, he can't hate, women or stuff like that, where the picture this guy is trying to paint, or he wouldn't be married like that. You know what I'm saying? So, and plus, man, when do we put the most feminist guys on panels to explain masculinity? That's what blows my mind sometimes. Like, is this the right person we need to have it on there defining masculinity? I'm not saying you got to have like the extra macho guys and stuff, but it's like, come on, man. Like, what we doing, man?
Women succeeding. I'm so confused. I feel like the problem is not, and actually maybe this is our fault. Maybe this is the left's fault. Maybe this is modern society's fault for leaving people like you behind. But genuinely, we do not hate men, and toxic masculinity has been thrown around a lot. Ultimately, some of what you're saying is toxic, but that's not because you're a man. That's because you're an idiot.
All right.
Okay. So just to give you a quick rejoinder here, again, didn't contend with a single argument I made. You just said, why are you acting like a victim? While you're here talking about how women are
You're not
victims.
contending with arguments that other people
It's
are
wild to me. It's so wild to me.
This is Piers' show.
Let me play another clip.
I know this is Piers' show.
Let me go to Tommy. Tommy, I want to play you a clip. This is from a show called Newsnight on the BBC in the UK, where the host, Victoria Derbyshire, had a panel of young men on and asked them, when was the last time you cried? Let's watch this.
Oh, God.
When was the last time you cried?
Honestly, the last time I cried, I couldn't tell you.
Same with Leo. I can't really remember the last time that I cried fully.
A lot of times I feel emotion and I look at myself, why can't I cry? We're told to suppress our emotions.
I feel like to guys, we may be treated a certain way that evokes an idea that we have to be extremely strong and upfront and here as a man, and I'm going to be composed at all times.
Now, I've got a slight issue with this, Tommy, in the sense that one of the most devastating moments for me as a movie watcher was watching James Bond blubbing in the last Bond movie. Right? I don't think to prove you're a modern man, you need to be sobbing all the time. I can't remember the last time I cried.
Yeah, I gotta agree. When people pushing the whole, like, man, if family members pass, stuff like that, it's like, yeah, man, you cry, but this whole push for like everybody expressing emotions, like I'm not with it either, man. Suck that shit in. Like, man, go. I tell people all the time, go do something productive. Like, I'm a thinker, man. So like, if I'm irritated about something, it's like, man, I'm gonna go hit the gym and I'm gonna like be in there strategizing and stuff, like thinking of like how I'm gonna fix my problem. Cause like crying just ain't gonna do shit. I don't think it's healthy because, like I said, it don't solve your problem, man. It's like, man, I could go do something productive, build myself up while like also, like I said, strategizing how to fix the situation, think it out, do some critical thinking. So it's like, man, I could multitask, kill two birds with one stone, feel better about myself, actually build and possibly solve that problem. But sitting in the fetal position crying like, hold me, honey. Yeah, nah, fuck that. Sorry.
Doesn't make me less of a man or less empathetic to people or anything. I just think again, the pendulum issue of what we want men to be. I think we're now trying to persuade a lot of young men, if you're not emoting all the time, then you're being suppressed in some way. We have over here the British stiff upper lip, which I think is a really bad rap. I think it's not a bad thing to actually not over emote. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's.
Oh, sorry, Sean. I'll come to you. That was for Tommy. I'll come to you in a minute, Sean.
Oh, sorry, Tom.
For Tommy.
Sorry.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all, Piers. I don't think that men should be trained to be overly emotional and that should be a sign now of new maturity, being emotional. I don't agree with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with men crying in certain circumstances. Listen, everybody has a different journey. Everybody has a different set of circumstances. There are circumstances wherein men crying, I have no issue with. It's also not up to me to tell a man when he can or cannot cry. I personally prefer the men in my life not to be overly emotional, but that's just a personal preference. Really, who am I to tell a man how he should exhibit his emotions? But again, I think that there is two sides here that are both too extreme. You've got the one hand that wants men to be feminine and cry and show their emotion and be weak. And then you've got the other side that says you cannot cry. You must always be strong and you should look at women as an object. So again, there's got to be a happy medium here. I think there once was, but now because of, again, I agree, there was an overreaction of the feminist movement to make men weak. I don't agree with that either.
Yeah.
I just wish we could come to a place where there was a happy medium where people could just be human beings who could have a gender role, but weren't married to that gender role in absoluteness. There's got to be a place for that. I would certainly hope.
Yeah. Andrew Wilson, when was the last time you cried?
I like what she said, but the only thing is like the happy medium. No, guys need to be a little bit more on I'll say the right. Definitely not on the part where objectifying women. Because like I said, me personally, I like smart women. I don't see why that's an issue with anybody. So yeah, not that part, but I don't want to see no grown ass man crying. Like I said, unless family members are that type of stuff are passed away, then yeah, you could cry, man. But other than that, I don't want to see your ass crying. You call me up and we could strategize. We could walk through some problems. But that whole crying shit, I'm sorry. That push, yeah, you got to be above the meat. There's no medium with that shit. I'm sorry.
When I had a death in my family.
And how long ago was that? If you don't mind me asking.
Many years. Many years. I don't know, maybe a decade, something like that.
Right. So you haven't shed a tear in a decade.
I don't think so. No.
Would you see it inherently as a weakness in a man to over-emote?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Men, listen. You don't want men to fall to pieces in crisis. You're the head of a family. You're the head of your household, and also you're the heads of nations. You have a moral obligation not to fall to pieces. In fact, I would say you're duty bound not to. You need to be able to control your emotions, and you need to be able to attempt to control them at all times. It's not to say that you're not going to lose control. Nobody's perfect. But I think that the idea of the stoic man is a much better prospect for the idea of like this leftist that I'm arguing with next to me on the panel. I would not want to be that guy, that person who just cannot control their internal emotions. They can't do it. And unfortunately, again, this is through the viewpoint of the feminine prism that it's only through empathy, right? Empathy first. And it's like, no, it's not always about empathy. It's also about reason. It's also about logic. It's also about understanding that we live in a carnal world full of warring tribes who are always killing each other. And that's part of the human condition. You can't afford to have your men losing control to emotion or to empathy.
James, when was the last time you didn't cry on a
date? Shout out to Piers, man. That was slick. But yeah, I have a sense that he's gonna be on some like I cry daily, I read poetry and shit to myself, getting my inner feelings. He's gonna be on some of that shit. Watch.
Let's flip the question around.
I haven't cried today, but I did cry yesterday, and I think it's okay to cry. And it's funny that you keep trying to goad me and saying that I don't have control of my emotions. I think I have incredible control over my emotions because I know what's upsetting me and when, and I'm able to talk about it.
Well, how often do you cry?
I mean, not all the time, but
every day?
No, not every day, Piers. I cried
2 or 3 times.
I probably haven't cried for about 3 weeks before that. But honestly, my therapist tells me I need to cry, and it's a good relief.
But the point being, Andrew hasn't cried in 10 years.
I think that is such a weakness, Andrew, that you haven't cried.
That's why I say, man, be careful with therapy, boy. They'll have you in there on some crying, feeling bad about yourself, man, and with life might not be really that bad. That's what I'm saying, man. You be careful. Shout out to Stan. Stan, give me pushback on that, but I be like, Stan, some of this stuff be overboard in the therapy. So he's an advocate for it, you know, getting your stuff together. So I definitely agree with him on that. So I'm not saying don't go, but they got you in there crying and shit. Like, man, get somebody else, man.
In a decade, like that's crazy to me.
Told me I could cry.
I'm so worried about you. I can't understand. Well, you're crying now, and please, I happily facilitated that for you.
I think we're seeing the two extremes that Tommy was talking about.
It's honestly, yeah, Tommy, you're so right. There's no nuance. I mean, it's difficult to have nuance on this show anyway, but we do need to find some in this debate.
I think the point is men should not feel they can never emote, but also they shouldn't be encouraged to believe if they're not constantly emoting. There's something wrong with them.
Well, of course, but also
and that's where the pendulum's just gone too far.
You are also sort of guilty of this manosphere, Piers. You're very much in the manosphere yourself.
What do you think that means?
Well, it means that you think James Bond shouldn't cry, and that if he does, that's a weakness.
I want James Bond to be. I want him to seduce women,
which he does.
I want him to be a ruthless, steely-eyed dealer of death to bad guys.
But also,
I want him to have a cigarette with his whiskey or his
Cosmopolitan.
Maybe Andrew is your type.
And I don't want him sobbing like a baby all the time.
I don't. Like Tommy might not.
Because guess what? When you're in Her Majesty's Secret Service, you don't have time to cry all the time.
Very sad news about Her Majesty, Piers. Sadly, she did pass away, and I'm sure you cried at that, which is completely
His Majesty now, obviously.
Tommy,
actually, the last time the last Bond film was under Her Majesty, so I was correct.
Fine. Great fact checking. Tommy would obviously like to go out with a man like you then, because you don't think it's okay for a man to cry.
Well, she has excellent taste.
But there are other women who do like a man that cries. Like, we're not all the same. We don't all require the same type of man. So it's fine if we all want to be different types of men, but there shouldn't be one rule for all men. And that's the problem.
All right, let me bring Sean back in and bring it back to adolescence, because this series is blown up worldwide. Got
I'm gonna have to check this series out, man.
Of people watching, talking about it, debating. A lot of parents thinking, what should they do if they have a young teenage boy? You know, and I saw it, as I was saying, with my three sons, the Jonathan Haidt book about cell phones. You know, from.
All right, I'm gonna stop it there, man. But no, I thought it was a good debate because, like I said, I think I like the discussions. Honestly, I kind of don't like debates. Because people be like, man, why don't you jump in some debates, man? You knowledgeable, you know how to break stuff down. I'm like, I like a conversation, man. And I don't mind people have different opinions, man. Because I could, elaborate on on my thoughts and why I might have a certain philosophy or something. And I'm cool with you not taking it. Like, at the end of the day, I think that's where sometimes people, it's like they want everybody to have the same structure and lifestyle that they do. And it's just like, man, it's all right to be different, man. I like a world where people have differences, but, just to get to the point and stuff, why people do that, I think that's where the conversations need to go. Start asking questions, why? Because I think if you have a growth mindset, you shouldn't be upset that somebody throws some shots or you get offended. Because like I said, you should come to the debate or whatever to be able to talk about why you do what you do. And if you have an issue explaining your shit, then you might not be really aligned with your philosophy. You're probably just, aligning with shit to cash out. And I think that's what's happening a lot, sometimes online. Like, people kind of jump behind terminology like, oh, I'm conservative, I'm liberal, I'm traditional, I'm this. Then you start asking them questions like, what does that mean? And they can't explain none of this shit. So it's just like, I think people just see the cool thing, like, oh, everybody's conservative over here. They're cashing out. They're getting paid. Let me jump in here and just say like the surface level bullet points. The left would do it too. They'll be like, oh, I'm woke, I'm liberal, and this. So that's why I'm seeing people just jump behind shit, not knowing what it really means, why they're actually behind it. And when we're talking about relationships, it's like, okay, what do you do for your man? And they're like, it's like, okay, shit. Well, I'm going to make the assumption you probably just want him to pay your bills. Like, since you can't explain your position, then shit, I'm going to explain it for you. Like, my assumption is like, you just want to use him for some money. He pays your bills and you're leading him. But you're going to say that's masculine because it benefits you. So that's why I think, hey, women, if y'all come up on here, man, and people ask you questions, don't get upset. Just explain what you do for your husband. And if it ain't shit, then just say that. Like, I really don't do shit for him, man. I'm in my soft girl era. I'm chilling, but all right, y'all, man. Thanks for tuning in. Shout out to Piers, man. I think this is very interesting what he's doing just to get the conversation started. So I definitely like how he's putting these together and stuff. I'm going to definitely do more reviews on that. But all right, y'all. Peace and keep tuning in.